My name is Nia. When I stood up to speak, my mother put her hand on my arm. She said, "Let her go first. She's the real daughter." I sat down. She smiled like it was settled. But when the judge opened the envelope and read the first name out loud, her face shifted, like she finally heard mine for the first time. I grew up in that house, the one with the creaky porch steps and the faded blue shutters, believing I was enough. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon rolls on Sundays, my father's laugh echoing as he flipped pancakes. Lila, my younger sister, was the golden child, born from my mother's womb, her curls bouncing with every step. I came later, adopted at 3, a quiet girl with tangled hair and a habit of sketching in the margins of old notebooks. Mom Mara always said I was special, her voice soft as she brushed my hair. But special didn't mean chosen. Not when Lila arrived. The shift started when I was 7. Lila's first recital, pink tutu, perfect pirouettes, drew the family to the auditorium, cameras flashing. I stayed home, grounded for spilling paint on the carpet, my sketchbook confiscated. Dad James patted my head, muttering, "Next time be more like her." I nodded, but the words sank deep. School projects, soccer games, even my straight A's, they faded next to Lila's spotlight. Mom framed her art, hung her medals, while mine gathered dust in a drawer. I didn't resent her. She was 5, then 10, then 16, always the one they watched. I became the helper, tutoring her math, mending her dresses, my hands busy but unseen. One night I overheard Mom on the phone, her voice low. "Nia's fine, but Lila's the bloodline. She's the future." I stood in the hallway, heart thudding, the cold tile under my feet a silent witness. By 15 I stopped trying to fit. I found solace in the garage, fixing Dad's old mower, the oil staining my fingers a badge of my own making. He noticed once, grunting approval, but it never lasted. Lila went to college, her tuition a family debate I wasn't part of. I worked nights at a diner, saving for trade school, my dreams of architecture tucked into a worn portfolio. Mom smiled less at me, her hugs reserved for Lila's return visits. When I graduated, no one came. I sent photos, me in a cap and gown alone on the stage, but the silence was louder than applause. I moved out, renting a tiny apartment above a bakery, the scent of bread a comfort they couldn't take. Letters came, birthday cards with Lila's name scrawled bigger, but I stopped reading them. The call came 6 months ago. Grandma Elsie, my rock, was gone. Her lawyer, Mr. Grayson, scheduled a will reading, his voice crisp over the phone. I hesitated, the memory of her warm kitchen, where she'd let me bake cookies while Lila played, pulling me back. Mom insisted I attend, her tone clipped. "It's family business, Nia. Be there." I agreed, packing a small bag, the portfolio under my arm a silent testament. The drive to Charleston was long, the highway blurring past, my mind replaying every sidelined moment. At the house, Lila greeted me with a tight smile, her designer bag a stark contrast to my worn jacket. Mom hugged her, then nodded at me, her eyes skipping over mine. Dad sat silent, his newspaper a shield. The air thickened with unspoken words. The reading was set for a courthouse, a formality Grandma insisted on. I arrived early, the marble floors echoing my steps, my palms damp. Lila wore a silk dress, Mom a pearl necklace, their confidence a wall. I stood at the back, my sketchbook in hand, sketching the room to steady myself. When the judge called us forward, Mom's hand on my arm stopped me. "Let her go first. She's the real daughter." Her smile was sharp, Lila stepping up with a practiced grace. I sat, the bench cold under me, my pulse a quiet drum. The judge, a gray-haired man with steady eyes, opened the envelope. My name, Nia Harper, rang out first. Mom's smile froze. Lila's head snapped toward me. The room held its breath, and I felt the first crack in their carefully built lie. That night I stayed in a motel, the neon sign buzzing outside. I spread my sketches on the bed, blueprints for a community garden, a dream Grandma once praised. The call from Mom came at midnight, her voice trembling. "Nia, this isn't over. We need to talk." I didn't answer, the sketches a map to a future they couldn't erase. The next day I met Mr. Grayson, his office lined with law books. He handed me a sealed letter from Grandma, her handwriting shaky but clear. "To Nia, my heart. They'll fight, but you're my legacy." I clutched it, the weight of her words a shield. Back home I dug out old photos. Me and Grandma planting seeds, her laugh captured in grainy light. They'd cut me out, but she hadn't. The fight was just beginning. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal notices. Mom called daily, her tone shifting from pleading to cold. Lila deserves more, Nia. You're not blood. I stayed silent, gathering evidence. Grandma's letters, my childhood drawings she'd kept, proof of our bond. Lila texted, demanding I step aside, her words sharp. You're stealing what's mine. I didn't reply, my focus on the court date. Dad sent a single email, neutral, asking for peace. I deleted it. The garden sketches grew, each line a defiance. One evening, I visited Grandma's plot, the magnolia trees swaying, her voice in the wind a quiet strength. I whispered, I won't let them erase me. The snow fell softly, a promise of what was to come. The motel room felt smaller that night. The neon signs hum a constant pulse as I traced Grandma Elsie's letter with my fingers. Nia Harper, once sidelined in my own family, now held a truth they couldn't bury. The sketches on the bed, blueprints for a community garden, notes from late-night talks with Grandma, scribbled ideas for a greenhouse she'd once praised, were my armor, each line a rebellion against the silence they'd imposed. The court date loomed, a battleground where their lies would face my documented bond. Mom's midnight call still echoed, her plea turning to demand, her voice trembling with a mix of guilt and control, but I stayed quiet, the letter a shield against her words. Mr. Grayson, the lawyer with his steady gaze and silver hair, became my ally, his office a fortress of legal weight, the shelves lined with books that smelled of dust and authority. The inheritance war had begun and I was ready to fight, my resolve hardening with every passing hour. The next morning I drove back to Charleston, the highway a blur of gray, my mind replaying every slight. Mom's hand on my arm, Lila's smug smile as she adjusted her silk scarf, Dad's averted eyes as he flipped through his newspaper. They fueled me, a quiet fire building in my chest. The car's engine hummed, a steady rhythm matching my heartbeat, and I gripped the steering wheel, the worn leather a lifeline. At home, the tension thickened like the air before a storm. Mom cornered me in the kitchen, her pearl necklace glinting under the harsh fluorescent light, her fingers tapping the counter nervously. Nia, step back. Lila's the blood heir. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I didn't flinch, my posture straight. Grandma chose me, I said, my voice low and firm. She laughed, a brittle sound that cracked against the tiled walls. She was old, confused. She didn't know what she was doing. I walked away, the letter burning in my pocket, its edges soft from my touch, a tangible piece of her belief in me. Lila followed, her heels clicking like a metronome on the hardwood floor, her designer bag swinging with each step. You're delusional. This is mine, she snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut. I turned, meeting her gaze, her eyes narrowing with a mix of anger and fear. Then why are you scared? I asked, my tone calm but piercing. She stormed off, her footsteps fading, and I knew the crack in their facade was widening, a fracture I could exploit. I spent days preparing, digging through old boxes in my apartment, the dust coating my hands as I sifted through memories. Photos emerged, me and Grandma at the garden, her hands guiding mine through the soil, her laughter captured in grainy light, Lila absent from every frame. Letters too, her shaky script praising my dreams of building something lasting while dismissing Lila's tantrums over trivial things like a missed dance class. I clutched a faded snapshot, the smell of earth still lingering, a connection they couldn't sever. I met Mr. Grayson again, spreading the evidence on his desk, the wood scarred from years of use. He nodded, his voice calm and measured, like a river over stones. This strengthens your claim. Her will is clear, but they'll fight dirty. Expect character attacks, forged documents, anything to discredit you. He handed me a file. Lila's attempts to alter the will, Mom's signature on a forged document dated months before Grandma's death, the ink smudged but legible. My chest tightened, a knot of betrayal forming. They planned this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He sighed, adjusting his glasses. They underestimated you. That's their mistake. I left with a strategy, the file a weapon tucked under my arm, my resolve steel, tempered by the weight of Grandma's trust. The confrontation came at dinner, a forced family gathering under the guise of reconciliation. Mom set the table, her movements stiff, the clatter of plates a tense symphony. Dad sat silent, his newspaper folded neatly, a barrier between us. Lila arrived, her boyfriend in tow, a polished man with a tailored suit who eyed me like a threat, his cologne overpowering the room. "Nia, let's settle this," Mom said, her tone sharp, her fingers tightening around a fork. "Sign over your claim. Lila needs this more than you." I leaned back, hands steady on the table, the wood cool against my skin. "Grandma's will says otherwise," I replied, my words deliberate. Lila smirked, her lips curling. "You think a judge will care about your little sketches and dirt-stained hands?" I didn't answer, the letter in my bag a quiet promise. Its presence a secret strength. Dad spoke, his voice low, almost lost in the hum of the refrigerator. "Nia, don't do this. We're family. Let it go for peace." I met his eyes, gray and weary, searching for a trace of the man who once taught me to ride a bike. "Family doesn't erase me," I said, the words heavy, cutting through the silence. The room fell still, the clink of forks a distant echo, the tension palpable. Mom's face hardened, Lila's boyfriend shifted uncomfortably, and I rose, leaving the table without another word, the door clicking shut behind me, a small victory. That night I stayed at Grandma's house, the creaky porch a memory lane, the wood groaning under my weight. I found her journal, pages filled with my name, plans for a garden she'd dreamed with me, sketches of flower beds I'd drawn as a child. Lila's name appeared once, a complaint about her attitude during a family picnic. Tears stung, but I didn't wipe them, letting them fall onto the page, a silent tribute. The next day I met Tara, a gardener who'd worked with Grandma, her hands rough from years in the soil. She handed me soil samples, proof of our projects, the earthy scent grounding me. "She loved you, Nia. This is yours," she said, her voice warm. I thanked her, the samples a tangible link to my past, slipping them into my bag. Back at the motel I reviewed the file. Mom's forgery, Lila's pressure on Grandma's nurse, a recorded conversation hinting at coercion. The evidence was airtight, but the emotional weight pressed down, a boulder on my chest. The week before court, Mom's calls intensified, her voice shifting from pleading to cold commands. "Nia, think of Lila. She's your sister. This will tear us apart." I stayed silent, sketching garden plans, each line a defiance, the pencil scratching against paper a rhythm of resistance. Lila texted threats, her boyfriend's legal team hinted at delays, their emails piling up unread. I ignored them, meeting Mr. Grayson for a final briefing, his office a haven of strategy. "They'll use your adoption against you," he warned, his finger tracing the file. "Be ready with your story." I nodded, the journal in my lap, Grandma's voice in every word, a guide through the storm. One evening I visited her grave, the magnolia trees swaying in the breeze, their petals falling like soft rain. "I'll make you proud," I whispered, the words carried away, a vow to reclaim what was mine. The snow fell softly, a blanket over the earth, a promise of what was to come. The night before court I sat in my apartment, the sketches spread out, the letter open on the table, its edges curling from use. Mom's last call came, her voice breaking. "Please, Nia. Don't humiliate us. Think of the family name." I hung up, the silence a strength, the hum of the city outside a distant lullaby. I packed the file, the journal, the soil samples. My case, my proof, my legacy. The drive to the courthouse was quiet, the dawn light soft, casting long shadows. I stepped inside, the marble cold under my boots, my heart steady. Mom, Lila, and Dad were there, their faces tight, a united front crumbling. Lila whispered to her lawyer, Mom avoided my gaze, her pearls a shield. The judge entered and I felt the moment shift. This was my stage, my silent explosion waiting to erupt, the envelope a key to their undoing. The courtroom felt vast, the air heavy with the scent of polished wood and anticipation. "My name is Nia." I stood at the back, the marble floor cold under my boots, the file clutched in my hands a lifeline. Mom Mara sat rigid in the front row, her pearl necklace a glinting shield, Lila beside her, her silk dress a silent boast. Dad James stared at the floor, his hands twisting in his lap. The judge, a stern woman with gray hair and a steady gaze, entered, her robe brushing the bench. This was my moment, the silent explosion I'd carried for years about to erupt. The envelope, Grandma Elsie's will, lay on the table, its worn edges a promise of justice. I took a deep breath, the weight of her journal in my bag grounding me. "Life told you who you love, not paper," I whispered to myself, the words a mantra. The proceedings began with a hum of legal jargon, the lawyer for Lila's side rising first. He was polished, his voice smooth, laying out their claim. Lila Harper is the biological granddaughter, the rightful heir to Elsie Harper's estate. Nia, adopted and estranged, has no legal or emotional tie. Mom nodded, her lips tight, Lila's hand resting on her arm. I stayed silent, my pulse steady, the soil samples in my pocket a quiet strength. Mr. Grayson stood, his voice calm but firm. The will speaks for itself, Your Honor. But we have evidence of manipulation, forged documents, coercion. He presented the file, the pages rustling as he laid them out. The judge leaned forward, her eyes narrowing, and I felt the room shift. The turning point came when the judge opened the envelope. The silence was thick, broken only by the crackle of paper. To my granddaughter, Nia Harper, she read, her voice clear, cutting through the tension. Mom's smile vanished, her hand dropping from Lila's arm. I leave the family estate, the gardens, and the trust fund established for her vision. Lila gasped, her chair scraping as she leaned forward. What? She hissed, her voice trembling. The judge continued, to Lila Harper, I leave a sum of $50,000, with the condition she respect Nia's role. Dad's head snapped up, his face pale. The room erupted, whispers, shocked glances, but I didn't move. The judge raised a hand, silencing them. There's more, she said, unfolding a letter. Nia, my heart, you built dreams where others saw weeds. This is yours. Mr. Grayson handed over the journal, its pages yellowed but alive with Grandma's words. The judge read aloud, her tone softening. Nia planted with me, dreamed with me while Lila turned away. I saw her love, not her blood. Mom's face twisted, a mix of rage and disbelief. Lila stood, her voice shrill. This is a mistake. She's not even, the judge cut her off. Sit down, Ms. Harper. The will is valid, supported by these records. She gestured to the file. Mom's forgery, Lila's nurse testimony, my sketches. The evidence was a wall they couldn't breach. I felt a tear slip, but I didn't wipe it, letting it fall as proof of my endurance. The aftermath was swift. Mom lunged toward me, her voice breaking. Nia, how could you? This destroys us. I stepped back, my voice steady. You destroyed me first. Lila grabbed her lawyer, demanding an appeal, but the judge's gavel fell, final. Dad approached, his eyes wet. Nia, I'm sorry. I should have. I raised a hand. Not now. He nodded, retreating, the weight of his silence finally sinking in. I left the courtroom, the air outside crisp, the magnolia trees near the steps a reminder of Grandma. The estate was mine, acres of land, a house, a garden, and with it a future they couldn't touch. I moved into the estate days later, the creaky floors a welcome echo. The garden was overgrown, but I saw potential. Rows of vegetables, a greenhouse, a space for others like me. Tara joined me, her expertise turning soil into hope. We planned a community project, Elsie's Bloom, a garden for overlooked kids, funded by the trust. The first meeting drew a dozen faces, shy girls, quiet boys, each holding a seedling, their eyes bright. I spoke, my voice firm. This is for those dismissed, for Grandma, for a life beyond paper. Applause washed over me, a tide of validation healing old wounds. Alone that night, I explored the attic, finding Grandma's gloves and a photo album. Inside was a picture of us planting, her note scrawled beneath, Nia, my legacy. They'll see. The loss stung, but pride filled the gap, tears falling as I traced her words. I framed it, a tribute above the fireplace. Lila called, her voice shaky. Nia, I was wrong. Can we talk? The apology surprised me, and though the past couldn't be undone, I sent a cautious reply. Reconciliation, a fragile hope. Mom and Dad sent a letter, formal, asking forgiveness. I didn't respond, the door to that chapter closed. The project grew, uniting strangers. Kids with mentors, families with gardens. One afternoon, sorting seeds, I found my first sketchbook, proof of the dream they mocked. It hung in the community hall, a symbol of transformation. The wind softened outside, a sign of calm as I planned Nia's rise, a fund for adopted youth. My journey from outcast to heir forged a new identity, and with my allies I turned their dismissal into triumph, step by step, building a life of purpose and justice. This story was brought to life by our amazing community. If you enjoyed it, Please subscribe to Revenge Tempest and drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you.